Hello, I'm Andra, and welcome to ACE, Andra Constantine Expediting, a channel where we can explore New York City code and legislation as it relates to doing business in New York City, specifically construction work. Today, I wanted to discuss site safety. And this is actually going to be a series because New York City has rolled out a huge book of legislation that involves hundreds of changes to the code and city rules. By code, I mean the building code, and there's going to be a new code coming out in 2022. So the most recent code that we're currently using in New York City construction is 2014. We are now going to have a revised 2022 code. So site safety, I think, is the most impactful because there are drastic changes to it. And that's what I want to discuss with you in this video. So what I'm going to do is pull up the summary of the intro bill and the actual bill itself. And we're going to explore the changes, anything that was added, anything that was removed. To make a long story short, and if you don't have time to sit through the whole video, they are adding huge restrictions that will really impact the way you manage your jobs from a site safety supervision perspective. They're going to limit the number of sites that a site safety manager can supervise. So currently it's 10 and it's going to be less. And that also affects job site supers. So here we go. I'm going to pull up the legislation, read it to you a little bit, discuss how to read the code. I'm not going to do this in every video, but just for this first one, just so we can wrap our heads around how to navigate this language and layout, and then I'll get into the changes. So basically, the first thing that I have up on my screen here is, it's called the Plain Language Summary. It's obtained from the New York City Council website. And here's where they introduce the new code or the new piece of legislation, in this case, Intro 2276. And they're going to give you a very short summary of what is going to change. So what they're saying here is the bill title, a local law to amend New York City Building Code in relation to construction superintendents and repealing certain sections of the New York City Building Code in relation to inspections required by site safety managers or coordinators and in relation to reasonable prudence required by safety managers or coordinators to ensure safety. Okay, we'll see what all that means when we get into the code. So now they're giving you a summary of the bill. And basically what they're saying is that because injuries and construction-related injuries actually were reduced by 20%, they're going to make the law even more strict, if that makes sense. So in 2019, construction-related injuries decreased over 20% compared to the previous year following the launch of the Construction Safety Compliance Unit at the Department of Buildings. So for those of you that know, it used to be BEST, now it's CSC, it's the same unit, which is dedicated to conducting proactive, unannounced inspections of larger construction sites. However, this was also being applied to minor construction sites. This includes sites that are required to designate a construction superintendent, site safety coordinator, or site safety manager. This decrease in injuries also coincides with the implementation of Local Law 196 of 2017, which requires site safety training for workers and supervisors at larger construction sites. This bill seeks to build on efforts to reduce construction-related injuries and fatalities by requiring additional site safety supervision at major buildings and construction sites. Such sites would be required to designate a full-time construction superintendent who would be responsible for safety and code compliance along with overall management of the construction project, in addition to safety coordination or safety manager. So let's break this down. What does that mean? Such sites would be required to designate a full-time construction superintendent. Why are they saying that? Because right now, any construction super or site safety manager can have up to 10 jobs on their card. Well, no longer. They're going to reduce it down to 1. And you will see the incremental plan that is going into effect. This is going to be law. So it says, effective date, this bill would take effect on January 1, 2022 and will apply to permits issued or renewed on or after such date. So in other words, you could have a permit where you didn't have to have this enhanced law, but once you renew your permit, it will apply. Now, interesting note, agency rulemaking required. Is city agency rulemaking required? It is. Now, it's interesting that they didn't note that agency rulemaking is required, but as we will see, they actually have been implementing some of this rule. So actually, very interesting to note. Let's go back to the summary here. It's saying this bill will take effect January 1, 2022. Is that so? Let's go to the actual bill and read that. Okay, so I'm going to skip all the way down to the bottom. It's 11 pages because that answers my question here. So it's going to say, this local law shall take effect on January 1, 2022 and shall apply to permits issued or renewed on or after such a date. We reviewed that in the summary. Provided that the Commissioner of Buildings may take such measures as necessary for implementation of this local law, including the promulgation of rules prior to such effective date. Okay, so that means that they can start implementing it sooner. They don't have to implement it on the release date of the law or the effective date of the law. And as we'll see from going through this legislation, they've already been implementing it. So typically what the city does is the departments will make up their own rules, enforce whatever rules they make up outside of the law. And because the law is required for any rules that they make, they will then back it into legislation. So that's what's happening here. And one example of that, as we will see, is the tenant protection plans, the approval of tenant protection plans. Initially, they were just something that had to be reviewed during the plan exam process. It was just a form that was submitted, and that was it. There wasn't too much that the examiners were able to comment on. It wasn't part of their scope. However, now with the release of DOB Now, we have to file tenant protection plans as a separate approval step to prior to permit. So they've been doing that before it became into law. Now it's going to become law, and they're just backing the law into what they were already doing. So the way this is written is basically, you see you have these, let me just show you an example. So you have these sections that I highlighted in blue with the SS, the section subject. Basically, that's what they're telling you they're amending. And then if you go here to these paragraphs, this is the code that they took out of the current code. And then anything that's highlighted, or that's underlined, excuse me, the highlights are mine, but anything that's underlined is what's added to the code. So basically, if we opened up any chapter, like in this case, chapter 33, then we would put this side by side and see that this underlined part does not currently exist in chapter 33, but it will exist. So this is what I was talking about. It's saying approved documents, and they're talking about what documents they're considered approved. So in the past, it was construction documents, your drawings, right? In this case, it's going to say, in addition to construction documents, such documents includes but are not limited to site safety plans, tenant or occupant protection plans. Okay, so they're saying that you're going to have to approve your tenant protection plan, which you're already doing now through DOB Now before it became a law, but they were doing it anyway. And also site safety plans. Now, if you don't know, we were able to file non-professional site safety plans, or rather just produce them, have them on site as long as the name of the producer of the plan was on the plans. Now you can no longer just have a site safety plan on site. It's going to have to go through an approval process. I don't know if there are going to be monetary changes related to this. As we know, the city is coming up with all kinds of ways to make money. And so it could be that there may be filing fees associated with it. Who knows? We don't know. But right now, they are going to make tenant protection plans and site safety plans something that has to go through a review and approval process. Not too bad. Some of you were already doing that, like I said. So let's go on and see what other big changes are happening. So here, it's going to tell us, so let's review this part here. This whole section here basically tells you when site safety supervision is triggered. And what this code is saying, I'm not going to read it word for word, but basically what it's saying is that any job that needs site supervision, for jobs that require the designation of a primary construction superintendent, a site safety plan that meets applicable requirements will be required. Okay, prior to commencement of the work. So here they're adding extra things. Also interesting is Actually, let's get that. So basically they're saying when you'll need a site safety plan, you need a site safety plan when you need site supervision, and when do you need site supervision? When you're doing any of these things, the construction of a new building, the full demolition of an existing building, an alteration to an existing building, vertical or horizontal enlargement, an alteration or demolition of more than 50% of the floor of the building during the course of work for a 2-month period, removal of one or more floors during the course of work over any 12-month period, work that requires a special inspection for underpinning, or work that requires a special inspection for the protection of sides of excavations or other jobs that pose an enhanced risk to the public and property as determined by the commissioner. So this could be anything. So now they're saying, they're giving you an exception, but they're not really. So they're saying, notwithstanding the above, construction superintendent is not required for work listed in section 33-1001 for which a site safety manager or coordinator must be designated. Well, that makes sense. If you need a site safety manager or coordinator, you don't also need a super. In the past, super was for 1, 2, or 3 family buildings. But now they're making an exception and they're saying a construction superintendent is not required for work that solely involves a 1, 2, or 3 family building or a necessary use of such a building, provided the permit holder for the work is registered as a general contractor. Okay, now it gets tricky. You think that they're giving you an out. You think they're saying, hey, I don't need a site super as long as I'm a registered general contractor. But that keyword there is registered because they're doing away with that. So in the next video, I'm going to do another video of changes for general contractors. And basically they're going to make it so that registered general contractor is no longer going to exist. Everyone will have to be a licensed general contractor, and as part of that license, you will have to have site safety training and a site safety manager on payroll. So basically, the reason they're saying you don't need to have a site super anymore for 1, 2, or 3 family homes is not because they're giving you a break. It's because they're actually going to make it more stringent. Now, as part of being a general contractor, you're going to have to be a site safety person. So watch out for that. New York City Building Code. Let's see what else. This is where it gets really rough. Okay, this is where they start limiting. So limitations on the designation of primary or alternate construction superintendent. So it says no individual may be designated as the primary construction superintendent on more than 10 jobs. We know this. That's what it currently is. But look at the exceptions. They're going to make it less than 10. Exception 1. I'm going to read the big letters are actually this part in blue is actually my summary. So what does exception 1 do? It's going to limit the super to just 1 job site if the building is over 10 stories. This is how they write it. If one of the jobs for which the construction superintendent is designated as a primary construction superintendent is on a building that meets the definition of a major building, the individual may only be designated as the primary construction superintendent for that job and may not serve as the primary construction superintendent for any other job. So that means if you're working on a major building, building more than 10 stories, you can only work on 1 building. So before you used to be able to have 10 jobs on your site, but now if one of them is more than 10 stories, you're only allowed 1 job. You're immediately reduced from 10 to 1. Exception 2. This one limits the super to just 5 total jobs. So it's saying, notwithstanding exception number 1, beginning on January 1, 2022, no individual may be designated as a primary construction superintendent for more than 5 jobs. So that means you're going to have 5 minor jobs. So only 1 major jobs or 5 minor jobs. So you can no longer have 10 jobs. Number 3. This further reduces limits of the super from 5 to a total of 3. So we're going from 10 currently. Then it's going to get reduced in January 1, 2022 to 5 jobs. And then in January 1, 2024 is going to get reduced to 3 jobs that you may supervise. So here's what it says. Notwithstanding exception number 1, beginning on January 1, 2024, no individual may be designated as a primary construction superintendent for more than 3 jobs. So in a few months, you're going to be reduced down to 5 jobs. In a couple of years, you'll be reduced down to 3 jobs. Then, furthermore, further reduces limits the super to just total 1 job site, even if it's not a major building. So here's where it's really going to hit hard. January 1, 2026. Notwithstanding exception number 1, beginning on January 1, 2026, no individual may be designated as the primary construction superintendent for more than 1 job. So regardless of whether it's major or minor, you can only supervise one job. So now they're phasing out multiple supervision on one super's card, supervision of multiple sites from 10 to 1 just on major jobs. But within 4 years, they're going to reduce the ability of the site super to supervise just one job, regardless of whether it's a major or minor building. So it's also saying that you may serve as a non-primary construction superintendent if you're not the primary, but it also says you can if the primary isn't required. So it's kind of mumbo jumbo there. And they're giving you an out in the exception, subject to approval of the commissioner. So if you apply to the commissioner, who knows, maybe there'll be fees associated with that application. A construction superintendent may serve as a primary construction superintendent for multiple non-major. So the exception only exists for non-major buildings. If your building is 15 stories, or actually really above 10 stories, forget it. You can't supervise more than one job. But it's saying, subject to approval of the commissioner, a construction superintendent may serve as the primary construction superintendent for multiple non-major building jobs located at the same lot or contiguous lots. So you can supervise multiple buildings if they're on the same lot and if you have approval from the commissioner. So here's where they're reinforcing what they said. So they're saying Section 3301.30% of Chapter 13 of the New York City Building Code, as added by Local Law Number 81 of 2017, is amended to read as follows. So here they're listing the duties of the construction superintendent. Again, the parts in parentheses, in brackets, are going to be deleted, and the parts underlined are going to be added. So basically, they're saying the job site and assure compliance, and now they're saying and ensure compliance. So they're just fixing a typo there, but that's what they're doing. They're omitting this and they're adding this to the code. And then this whole underlined part here, Section 4, is a whole new paragraph. So it's saying, or beginning January 1, let's start from the beginning, visiting each job site for which the construction superintendent is responsible each day when active work is occurring, or beginning January 1, 2026, where Section 3301.30.6 requires the construction superintendent to be dedicated to one job, being present at the job site for which the construction superintendent is responsible during other times when active work is occurring. So they are reinforcing what we just read above, the exceptions above. They're saying as of January 1, 2026, where a superintendent is required, that superintendent is only allowed to be on one job. That's it. You can now go, so you're being reduced from 10 to 1. So that's going to affect how you make money and how much you charge homeowners. Because now, if you're reducing the ability of a site super to make money to 1/10, does that mean that the cost of supervision goes up times 10 to the homeowner that's doing a renovation? Competent person. So here they're saying you used to be able to designate a competent person. Again, this is how the law reads now. This is what they're adding, the exception. So the exception, they're saying beginning January 1, 2026, where section so-and-so requires the construction superintendent to be designated to one job, the designation of a competent person is not authorized. In the event the primary construction superintendent cannot be present at the job site while active work is occurring, an alternate construction superintendent shall act on behalf of the primary construction in accordance with, okay. So that means that you cannot designate a competent person, and if you cannot be there all day, you're going to have to amend your permit in order to change the super. So that's going to be interesting. There's not much else in here. They're being more stringent about meetings, record keeping, reporting. They're going to want contractors to report unsafe conditions to the department, correct them, but also report on the owner or whomever is responsible, the property owner. Here, this is another additional duty. So the site safety manager or coordinator shall monitor compliance with the site safety plan, the tenant or occupant protection plan, and any rules promulgated thereunder. So basically, the site safety coordinator doesn't just now, before the tenant or occupant protection plan was the responsibility of the general contractor and also the professional that signed for it. Now it's going to be the site safety manager. So you're going to need to have a site safety manager if you just have a tenant protection plan. How is that? Well, your contractor is not going to be able to be a contractor unless they have site safety training. So that's going to be part of it. So again, this is about, they're just adding a bunch more inspections that people have to do daily. And they are saying that that as far as a site safety person is concerned, they could delegate another person. And they're also saying here that you're not allowed to start work unless you have signed off on the prior day's work and logs. And again, back to this part, so saying this local law shall take effect January 1, 2022, except when, the commissioner decides that they want to do stuff sooner, which they've already done with the tenant protection plan, implementation of tenant protection plans in DOB now, which require review by the department, and that wasn't the case in Biz. So that's it. I hope that this was helpful to you, and that you learned something, and that it's going to help you manage how you do business within the next couple of months, because it's going to it's going to directly affect you now if you're a site safety supervisor, if you're a site safety management company, certainly if you're an owner, and if you're doing any minor demolition on your house, this is going to affect you as well. And then it's going to go further, and that'll be the next chapter that I discuss, the next intro, which will be how it affects general contractors. So they're going to basically marry this site safety and general contractor thing into enhanced requirements as a whole. So thank you for visiting my channel. Stay tuned for more if you found this interesting, and I will see you soon. Bye.